High in the hills, where the air grew thinner and the sounds of the world softened into wind and birdsong, there stood a small monastery built of stone and aged wood. It was not marked on most maps. Travelers passed below without knowing it existed, and pilgrims rarely climbed far enough to reach it. The place did not seek attention, and neither did the monk who lived there. His name was known only to those who needed it. To the villagers in the valley, he was simply the monk from the hills. He had arrived many years ago, carrying nothing but a patched robe, a begging bowl, and a calm presence that seemed to settle the ground beneath his feet. No one knew much about his past, and he never offered stories of who he had been before taking vows. When asked, he would smile gently and say, "What matters is only who I am now." The monastery itself was modest. One meditation hall, a small kitchen, a single bell that rang at dawn and dusk. The monk woke before sunrise each day, long before the valley stirred. He swept fallen leaves from the stone path, not because the path needed to be clean, but because the act of sweeping reminded him to clear his own mind. Each movement was slow, deliberate, and free from impatience. To him, sweeping was not a chore, it was a form of meditation. After morning practice, he would sit cross-legged facing the mountains, eyes half closed, breath steady. He did not chase thoughts away. He watched them rise and fall like mist drifting through the peaks. Joy came. He observed it. Sorrow came. He observed that too. Praise and blame, hope and fear, all were treated the same. Visitors sometimes mistook this for detachment or coldness, but those who stayed long enough felt something else entirely, a quiet warmth that did not cling. Despite his preference for solitude, the monk was not isolated from the world. Once or twice a week, he walked down to the village to offer simple teachings and receive alms. He never preached loudly or spoke at length. Often, his teachings came in the form of a single sentence, spoken softly, then followed by silence. Many villagers found this puzzling at first. They were used to answers that filled the air, explanations that satisfied the intellect. His words, however, seemed to point beyond language. Children followed him openly, drawn by his gentle smile and patient attention. Elders respected him for his consistency. He treated everyone the same. The wealthy merchant and the poorest farmer received equal bows, equal listening, equal compassion. When disputes arose in the village, people sometimes asked him to mediate. He never took sides. Instead, he asked questions that turned each person inward, toward their own mind. Strangely, conflicts often dissolved without him offering a solution. What set the monk apart was not knowledge, nor ritual, nor reputation. It was his relationship with silence. He did not rush to fill it. When insulted lightly, he did not react. When praised, he did not expand. People noticed that he never defended himself, not even in small matters. If someone misunderstood his words, he clarified only when clarity was necessary for learning, never for protecting his image. If someone spoke falsely about him, he remained still, as though the words had landed on empty space. One afternoon, a young villager asked him, half jokingly, "Do you never get angry?" The monk paused, placing a stone gently beside the path where he was walking. He looked at the boy and said, "Anger comes, but I do not invite it to stay." The boy laughed, not fully understanding, and ran off. The monk watched him go, not with pride in his answer, but with awareness of how easily words could be misunderstood when the listener was not ready. To many in the village, the monk became a symbol of purity. Some idealized him, placing him on a quiet pedestal in their minds. Others felt uneasy around him, sensing that his presence reflected parts of themselves they did not wish to see. A few resented him silently, uncomfortable with a man who seemed untouched by the games of status and defense that ruled ordinary life. The monk noticed all of this, but he did not internalize it. He understood that projection was a mirror, not a truth. People saw in him what their own minds carried. He did not correct their perceptions, because correcting them would require him to participate in the very illusion he had spent years observing and releasing. At night, when the monastery grew still, he sat alone under the open sky. Stars spread across the darkness, countless and indifferent. In those moments, he reflected not on how others saw him, but on the subtle movements of the self that still arose within. The ego, he knew, did not disappear simply because one wore robes. It hid in quieter places, The wish to be seen as humble, the satisfaction of being thought wise, the subtle preference for peace over discomfort. So he watched even that. He reminded himself daily of a simple truth. Suffering is born not from events, but from attachment to identity. To defend oneself is to declare that there is a solid self that must be protected. To argue against blame is often to feed the very sense of I that practice is meant to soften. This did not mean he believed injustice was acceptable. It meant he trusted a deeper order, one that unfolded through cause and effect, beyond personal control. He trusted karma not as punishment or reward, but as natural law. Actions ripened. Intentions left traces. Nothing needed to be forced. Unbeknownst to him, this quiet life, so carefully lived, so inwardly examined, was approaching a test unlike any he had faced before. A test that would not challenge his discipline, his morality, or his faith, but something far more subtle, the human urge to be understood. For now, the hills remained silent. The monastery stood unchanged. The monk continued his routines, unaware that a single misunderstanding, still forming in the minds of others, would soon ripple outward and disturb the still water of his life. And when it did, the world would learn what his silence truly meant. It began without intention, no sharp accusation, no raised voice, only a passing sentence, spoken lightly, almost carelessly, like a pebble dropped into still water. A woman in the village had lost a small pouch of coins. It was not a great sum, but it mattered to her. She searched her home, retraced her steps along the market road, and questioned her children. Nothing. Later that afternoon, while speaking with a neighbor, she mentioned, without certainty, without malice, that she had last noticed the pouch after returning from the monastery path. "I must have dropped it somewhere," she said, more to herself than to anyone else. "Perhaps near the monk's place." The neighbor nodded. There was no accusation in the gesture, only acknowledgement. Yet the words lingered. By evening, the sentence had changed slightly as it passed from mouth to mouth. She lost her coins near the monastery. By the next day, it became, she lost her coins after visiting the monk. No one said outright what they were beginning to think. But thought, once formed, rarely needs to be spoken to be felt. The monk, unaware of this small shift in the air, continued his days as usual. He swept the path. He meditated at dawn. He descended to the village when the bell of habit called him. When he arrived, he noticed subtle changes. Conversations softened when he approached. Smiles arrived half a breath late. Eyes turned away more quickly than before. He noticed, and let the noticing pass. To him, such changes were familiar. Human minds, he knew, were rarely still. They reached for stories the way hands reach for tools. If there was uncertainty, the mind filled it. If there was discomfort, the mind sought a reason. Often, the reason chosen said more about the chooser than the subject itself. Still, the whispers continued to travel. A young man mentioned the lost coins while sharing tea. An elder responded thoughtfully, "The monk is human, after all." Another villager added, "He lives alone. Who knows what he needs?" No one spoke these words with cruelty. That was the most dangerous part. The blame grew not from hatred, but from familiarity and assumption. The monk was close enough to be imagined, yet distant enough to remain unknowable. A few days later, the pouch was found. It lay beneath a cart near the market, trampled into the dust. The woman laughed with relief, embarrassed by her worry. She told a few people, and they nodded. Some felt the matter was settled. But not all seeds die when the truth appears. For some, the question lingered quietly. What if it had not been found? The mind does not easily release a story once it has tasted certainty, however brief. Another whisper soon followed the first. Someone claimed they had seen the monk speaking privately with a traveler late at night. Another said the traveler had left before dawn. No wrongdoing was named, but suggestion thickened the air. The monk's silence, once admired, now became suspicious. His solitude, once respected, was reinterpreted. Why does he live so far from everyone? Why does he speak so little? Why does he never explain himself? Each why carried an unspoken judgment. The monk sensed the shift more clearly now. When he walked through the village, greetings were shorter. When he offered teachings, fewer people came. Those who did listened with polite distance, as if measuring each word for hidden meaning. A younger monk from a nearby monastery visited one afternoon. He had heard fragments of the talk and felt uneasy. "Brother," he said gently, "people are beginning to speak strangely. Some are questioning you." The monk poured tea slowly, watching the steam rise and vanish. "Questioning what?" he asked. "You," the younger monk replied. "Your actions, your intentions." The older monk nodded once, not in agreement, but in understanding. "And what do you think?" he asked. The younger monk hesitated. "I think silence invites interpretation. Perhaps you should speak. Clarify. Protect yourself." The monk looked at him with kind eyes. "Protect what?" The younger monk did not answer. That evening, as the sun sank behind the hills, the monk sat outside his cell and reflected. He did not rehearse explanations. He did not prepare defenses. Instead, he turned inward and watched the subtle stirring of discomfort. There it was, a tightening in the chest. Not fear, but the faint echo of an old habit. The wish to be seen clearly, to be understood, to be innocent in the eyes of others. He did not reject the feeling. He named it silently. This is ego seeking safety. He remembered a teaching given long ago by his own teacher. When blame comes, observe who receives it. If there is no one to receive it, blame has nowhere to land. Still, the human world moved differently. The whispers grew louder, not because they were proven, but because repetition gave them weight. Each retelling stripped away nuance, leaving only suspicion. Silence was no longer interpreted as peace, but as evasion. Why doesn't he say anything? Why doesn't he deny it? An innocent man would defend himself. These thoughts spread easily because they aligned with how most people live, defending identity, preserving image, protecting reputation. The monk heard none of these words directly, and yet, he felt their presence like distant thunder. He knew what was forming. He knew where it could lead. He also knew something else. To speak now would not end the whispers. It would feed them. Words would become fuel. Every explanation would invite another question. Every defense would strengthen the idea of a self in danger. And so he chose stillness, not as avoidance, not as passivity, but as practice. He continued to bow when passing villagers. He continued to offer help when asked. He did not withdraw, nor did he lean forward to reclaim trust. He allowed misunderstanding to exist without becoming its opponent. This, however, was not what the village expected. Silence, in their eyes, was becoming a statement. And the quiet life in the hills, once admired, once ignored, was now being slowly rewritten by the minds of others, each adding a line, each believing they were only observing truth. The first whisper had become a murmur, and the murmur was learning how to speak. Silence has many faces. To the one who practices it, silence can be refuge, clarity, and truth without distortion. To the one who observes it from the outside, silence often feels like absence, or worse, concealment. In the village, the monk's quiet was no longer neutral. What had once been interpreted as humility was now reframed as avoidance. Where people once said, "He speaks little because he has nothing to prove," they now whispered, "He speaks little because he has something to hide." The shift was subtle but decisive. A group of villagers gathered one evening near the communal fire. The conversation drifted, as it often did, toward the monk. No one intended cruelty. Each person spoke with the comfort of shared assumption. If he were innocent, one man said, stirring the embers with a stick, surely he would say something. Anyone would, another agreed. Silence helps no one. An older woman hesitated before speaking. Or perhaps he believes silence is wisdom. The group fell quiet for a moment. Then someone laughed softly. Wisdom does not ignore confusion. And just like that, silence was judged. The monk, meanwhile, continued his daily routine with unwavering presence. He noticed the tightening around him, the way footsteps paused when he entered a space, the way conversations resumed only after he left. He did not take these as personal wounds. Instead, he observed them as phenomena, like weather passing through the human heart. Yet even observation has layers. One morning, as he carried water from the spring, a thought arose uninvited. They do not understand. He stopped walking. The thought was small, almost gentle. But he recognized it immediately. Understanding, he knew, was another form of attachment. The desire to be understood could be as binding as the desire to be praised. He breathed deeply and watched the thought dissolve. Understanding is not owed, he reminded himself. Truth does not depend on agreement. Still, The village was changing. A few villagers who once sought his counsel now avoided him entirely. Others watched him with open suspicion. Some, unable to reconcile their discomfort, became openly critical. Holiness that hides is not holiness, one man declared loudly in the market, glancing deliberately in the monk's direction. The monk heard the words. He felt the vibration of sound pass through his body and disappear. He did not react, not because he was numb, but because he understood what reacting would create. A reaction would confirm the narrative. To defend oneself is to accept the premise that one is under attack. And to accept that premise is to strengthen the illusion of a separate self that can be threatened. The monk understood that the villagers were not truly reacting to him. They were reacting to uncertainty, to discomfort, to the unease of not knowing. Human minds prefer a flawed explanation to open space. And silence creates space. One afternoon, a respected elder approached the monk directly. His tone was polite but firm. "People are confused," the elder said. "Your silence is not helping." The monk bowed. "Confusion belongs to the mind that holds it." The elder frowned slightly. "That may be true, but your silence allows confusion to grow." The monk looked at him calmly. "Does speech always reduce confusion?" The elder had no immediate answer. "Sometimes," the monk continued gently, "speech calms the listener. But sometimes it only calms the speaker." The elder studied him for a long moment. "You risk losing the village's trust." The monk nodded. "Trust that depends on explanation is already fragile." This was not defiance. It was clarity. The elder left unconvinced. That night, the monk sat alone in meditation longer than usual. Not because he was troubled, but because he sensed a deeper teaching unfolding, one that could not be rushed. He observed the subtle layers of ego that still arose, even now. There was the impulse to correct misunderstanding, the impulse to restore harmony, the impulse to ease others' discomfort. Each impulse appeared virtuous on the surface, but beneath them lay a quieter truth. They all sought control over how he was perceived. And perception, he knew, was not his responsibility. He remembered a teaching from the early sutras. Suffering arises not from being misunderstood, but from resisting misunderstanding. The next day, a young boy followed him up the monastery path. "Why don't you tell them the truth?" the boy asked bluntly. The monk smiled. "What do you think the truth is? That you didn't do anything wrong." The monk stopped walking and crouched to meet the boy's eyes. "And if I tell them that, will they believe it?" The boy hesitated. "I don't know." "Then the truth is already complete," the monk said. "Belief is extra." The boy frowned, unconvinced but thoughtful, and ran ahead. As days passed, the silence hardened in the village's collective mind. Silence was no longer seen as emptiness, but as strategy. People began to interpret restraint as arrogance. "He thinks he is above us," someone said. "He refuses to explain himself," another added. "Perhaps he believes karma will protect him," a third sneered. Ironically, they were not entirely wrong, but not in the way they meant. The monk did trust karma, not as a shield, but as a mirror. Karma, he knew, did not rush. It did not argue. It unfolded with precision, responding not to appearances, but to intention. He understood that speaking now, in the heat of suspicion, would plant new causes. Causes rooted in fear, defense, and division. Silence, though misunderstood, planted a different seed. Not clarity, not resolution, but truth without interference. The villagers mistook silence for weakness because they had been trained all their lives to equate strength with assertion. To them, a person who did not defend himself was either guilty or powerless. They could not imagine a third possibility. That silence could be strength without aggression. That stillness could be integrity. That a self not defended might be a self already let go. The monk knew that this misunderstanding was not accidental. It was inevitable. A mirror does not comfort those who avoid reflection. And so he remained silent. Not because he feared judgment, not because he lacked words, but because he understood something the village had forgotten. Not every battle deserves participation. Not every accusation requires response. And not every truth needs a voice to survive. The silence, though misread, was not empty. It was waiting. The change did not arrive all at once. It settled slowly, like winter creeping down from the mountains, unnoticed at first, undeniable once it had taken hold. Where the monk once moved through the village as part of its quiet rhythm, he now moved through a different atmosphere. Conversations no longer paused out of respect, but out of caution. Smiles, once unguarded, became measured. Some villagers nodded stiffly. Others looked away entirely. The faces had turned cold. It was not hostility in the open sense. No one shouted accusations. No one barred him from the path or raised a hand against him. Instead, the village practiced a subtler violence, withdrawal, distance, the silent agreement to treat him as other. Coldness, the monk knew, often felt safer than cruelty. When he descended the hill one morning to receive alms, doors opened more slowly. A few bowls remained empty. Others were filled without eye contact, the offering placed quickly, as if the giver feared being seen giving it. He bowed to each person the same way he always had. Not deeper, not shorter, not differently. This consistency unsettled people more than anger would have. Some villagers expected him to react, to show hurt, to show pride, to show something that would justify their suspicion. But he gave them nothing to grasp. His presence was unchanged, and that constancy reflected their own inconsistency back at them. A group of men stood near the well as he passed. "Look at him," one muttered, not quietly enough. "As calm as ever." "Yes," another replied. "Too calm." The monk heard them. He felt the familiar stirring of the body, a slight tightening, a faint warmth rising in the chest. Not anger, but its cousin, the instinct to correct, to speak, to reassert balance. He acknowledged the sensation and let it pass. Inside him, something ancient was being tested. The Buddha had once spoken of 8 worldly winds: gain and loss, praise and blame, fame and disrepute, pleasure and pain. The monk had studied them for years. He had watched them move through his mind in subtle forms. Now, they were no longer theoretical. Blame had arrived, not as a storm, but as a season. The villagers' judgment deepened as days passed. Their certainty fed on itself. Each neutral act was reinterpreted. Each silence became confirmation. If the monk walked alone, he was avoiding people. If he helped someone, he was performing kindness to repair his image. If he said nothing, he was arrogant. If he spoke, he would be manipulative. There was no correct move left in the eyes of those who had already decided. This, too, the monk recognized. Once the mind chooses a conclusion, it reorganizes reality to support it. A woman who once brought her sick child to the monk for quiet blessing now crossed the road when she saw him. A farmer who had sought his counsel in moments of despair no longer greeted him. Even the children, once fearless, now watched him cautiously, as if adults' fear had leaked into their own understanding. The monk did not resent them. Fear spreads faster than truth. One afternoon, while sweeping the monastery steps, he noticed a young novice watching him from a distance. The boy had been sent from another temple to learn discipline and meditation. His eyes were full of confusion. "Why do they treat you this way?" the novice finally asked. The monk continued sweeping. "Because their minds are trying to protect themselves." "From what?" "From uncertainty." The novice frowned. "But you have done nothing wrong." The monk smiled gently. Doing nothing wrong does not guarantee being understood. The boy fell silent, absorbing this. The monk knew that his own mind was being refined in this fire. Each cold glance tested the depth of his non-attachment. Each whispered judgment invited the ego to rise and defend its territory. And sometimes, late at night, it almost did. In the stillness of his cell, thoughts appeared uninvited. "This is unfair. They are mistaken. Why must silence always be misunderstood?" He did not condemn these thoughts. He treated them as guests, just as his teacher had taught him to do. He watched them come. He watched them go. Then he looked deeper. Who is it that finds this unfair? Who is it that wants recognition? Who is it that suffers from being misjudged? Each question dissolved the solidity of the pain. The next test came quietly. A village meeting was held to discuss communal matters. In previous months, the monk had been invited out of habit, even when his presence was not required. This time, no one came to the monastery to inform him. He learned of the meeting only by chance, overhearing voices as he passed near the gathering place. He stopped. For a moment, the old reflex appeared, the sense of exclusion, the echo of belonging threatened. A subtle ache followed, not sharp, but real. He breathed. This, too, was impermanence. He turned away and walked back toward the hills. The absence of invitation was not an insult, he reminded himself. It was simply the natural consequence of shifting perceptions. To resist, it would be to cling to a role he no longer needed. Yet, as the village distanced itself, the monk's life grew even quieter. No more visitors lingered after teachings. No more casual conversations unfolded on the path. No more spontaneous laughter with the children. The outer world contracted. The inner world expanded. He found himself sitting longer in meditation, not out of escape, but out of curiosity. The pressure of judgment had stripped away comforts he had not realized he still carried. Without social warmth, without affirmation, what remained? Breath, awareness, presence. Enough. One evening, as dusk painted the hills in fading gold, the monk walked to the edge of the monastery grounds and looked down at the village below. Smoke rose from chimneys. Life continued. Meals were cooked. Stories were told. He felt no bitterness. Instead, he felt a deep compassion. They believed they were judging him. In truth, they were revealing themselves. Their coldness was not about him, but about the fear of being wrong, the fear of uncertainty, the fear of stillness. His silence forced them to sit with questions they did not want to ask, and so they turned away. This was not a failure of practice. It was its fruit. The monk understood now that this was not merely a misunderstanding to endure, but a teaching unfolding in real time, one that would test whether his freedom was conditional or complete. Could he remain open while others closed? Could he remain kind while others withdrew? Could he remain silent without becoming hardened? These were not questions answered by words. They were answered by how he walked, how he bowed, how he breathed, how he did not change. As the last light faded, the monk returned to his cell. He lit a single lamp and sat. Outside, faces remained cold. Inside, something remained untouched. And the storm of judgment, still gathering strength, had not yet reached its peak. Outwardly, the monk's life appeared unchanged. Inwardly, a quiet war had begun. It was not the kind of battle fought with raised voices or sharp thoughts. It was subtler, more intimate, a battlefield where no one else could see the struggle and where victory could not be claimed without honesty. Each morning, as the monk sat in meditation before dawn, the same calm breath moved in and out. The same mountain stood unmoved. The same bell echoed through the thin air. And yet, within this familiar stillness, something new was unfolding. The mind, when pressed by judgment, reveals its deepest habits. At first, the monk noticed only faint disturbances, a slight restlessness before sitting, a lingering thought after rising. These were not storms, only ripples. But ripples, when watched closely, reveal their source. One morning, during meditation, an image appeared unbidden. Villagers gathered, speaking his name with doubt. The image dissolved, but a sensation remained, a tightening in the chest, almost imperceptible, but real. He did not push it away. Instead, he turned his attention directly toward it. "What is this?" he asked silently. The answer did not come in words, but in recognition. This was the ego's territory. The ego does not always announce itself as pride or anger. Often, it appears disguised as reasonableness, fairness, even virtue. It whispers, "I only want clarity." It insists, "I only want truth to be known." But beneath those words lies a simpler desire. "I want to be seen as I believe I am." The monk had spent years observing the ego in quieter forms. The wish to be a good monk, the satisfaction of discipline, the subtle comfort of spiritual identity. He had loosened many of its grips. But now, the ego had found a sharper edge. It wanted to defend innocence. And innocence, when defended, becomes an identity. As the days passed, this inner tension surfaced more clearly. During walking meditation, thoughts arose. If I spoke now, I could end this. A few words would restore balance. Silence is being misunderstood. Each thought carried urgency. Each felt justified. And each, when examined, pointed back to the same root. The belief that peace depended on others' understanding. The monk stopped walking and stood still on the forest path. "Who is disturbed?" he asked quietly. Not why is there disturbance, not how can it be fixed, but who is disturbed? He waited. At first, there was no answer. Then slowly, something became clear. The disturbance belonged not to awareness, but to the image of a self within awareness. A self that had history, A self that had reputation. A self that could be damaged. The monk smiled faintly. He had found the battlefield. From that day forward, he treated the accusations not as an external problem, but as a mirror for practice. Each time the urge to explain arose, he examined it closely. If I speak, what am I protecting? If I remain silent, what am I afraid of losing? Sometimes, the answer surprised him. One afternoon, while preparing a simple meal, he noticed irritation arise, not toward the villagers, but toward the situation itself. This should not be happening, the mind said. He paused, knife resting on the cutting board. Should, he knew, was one of the ego's favorite words. Reality, as it is, has no obligation to align with expectation. He watched the irritation soften as soon as it was seen. At night, when the world quieted and the mind grew less guarded, deeper layers emerged. Memories from long before monastic life surfaced. Moments of being blamed unfairly as a child, of being misunderstood, of being judged without voice. He realized then that the present pain was not entirely new. It was touching old impressions stored deep within consciousness. This was karma unfolding, not as punishment, but as pattern. The monk bowed inwardly to the insight. This was not simply a test of silence. It was a chance to dissolve something ancient. On the seventh day after the village meeting, a thought came with particular force. If this continues, you may lose everything. The monk sat with this thought longer than the others. Everything. What was included in that word? Respect. Belonging. The role of teacher. The image of integrity reflected by others. All forms. All impermanent. He saw then how subtly the ego had tied itself to even spiritual simplicity. Though he owned little, he had still been nourished by trust. Though he sought no praise, he had still been surrounded by quiet acceptance. Now, even that was being taken away, and something within him trembled. Not fear. Grief. Grief for the loss of connection, for the warmth of unspoken harmony. Grief for the human wish to be held gently by community. He did not deny this grief. He allowed it to move through him fully. And in doing so, he discovered something unexpected. The grief did not destroy him. It did not break his practice. It did not require defense. It simply arose and passed. In that passing, a deeper clarity emerged. He realized that silence was not the absence of response. It was a response that did not come from fear. To defend himself would be to interrupt this process prematurely. It would preserve parts of the ego that were now loosening under pressure. The battlefield was not asking for victory. It was asking for surrender. The monk recalled a teaching he had once heard. When the self is threatened, practice begins. Now he understood it fully. Each cold glance from the village was sharpening awareness. Each misunderstanding was exposing attachment. Each urge to explain was revealing where identity still hid. This was not suffering to escape. This was suffering to learn from. One evening, as he sat beneath the stars, the monk felt a quiet shift within. The thoughts still came, but they no longer pulled. The urge to correct no longer demanded action. He felt something settle, not resignation, but acceptance without bitterness. If the village turned away completely, he would remain. If they returned, he would remain. If blame deepened, he would remain. Not because he was strong, but because he was no longer standing on something that could be taken. The inner battlefield had not ended, but its noise had softened. And in that quiet, the monk understood something crucial. The real test was never the accusation. The real test was whether the ego would survive it. As dawn approached, the monk opened his eyes and breathed deeply. The mountains were unchanged. The world continued. And within him, a subtle freedom was taking root, fragile, honest, and earned through the courage to look inward rather than outward. The next challenge would come soon. But now, he was ready to meet it without armor. The teaching returned to him one morning as clearly as if it were spoken aloud. The Buddha had once asked his disciples to imagine a man struck by an arrow. The pain of the wound was immediate and undeniable. But instead of seeking help, the man began to ask questions. Who shot it? Why? What caste was the archer? What was the arrow made of? While he demanded answers, the poison spread, and he suffered needlessly. The first arrow, the Buddha taught, is unavoidable pain. The second arrow is the one we shoot ourselves. As the monk sat at the edge of the monastery steps, the dawn light stretching slowly across the hills, he understood with fresh clarity where he stood in that story. The first arrow had already struck. Blame, misunderstanding, withdrawal, judgment. These were not things he could prevent. They had arrived through conditions beyond his control. Fear, rumor, habit, collective imagination. To pretend otherwise would be denial, not wisdom. But the second arrow? That was still in his hands. The second arrow was the urge to defend. The second arrow was resentment. The second arrow was the story of injustice repeated in the mind. The second arrow was the quiet belief that peace depended on being seen correctly. This arrow had not yet been released. The monk felt its weight clearly now. Each day, opportunities to pick it up presented themselves. A sharp comment overheard. A bowl left empty during alms. A door closed too quickly. Each moment whispered the same invitation. Respond. Protect. Explain. Correct. The world, after all, would understand such a response. People would call it reasonable, even wise. But wisdom, the monk knew, was not measured by agreement. That morning, as he prepared to walk down to the village, he paused before stepping onto the path. He closed his eyes and placed one hand lightly over his chest. "What is being threatened?" he asked inwardly. The answer came gently, without drama. An image, a role, a memory of belonging. Not life, not truth, not awareness, only a construction. He stepped onto the path. As he walked, the monk practiced something new. Not silence, for silence had always been his companion, but intentional non-reaction. Each sound, each glance, each subtle rejection was received fully, without resistance. He did not brace against pain. He did not numb himself to it. He allowed it to touch him, and then pass through. At the market, a merchant turned his back deliberately as the monk approached. The movement was unmistakable. The monk felt the familiar tightening arise. "There it is," he noted. He did not add a story to the sensation. "No, how unfair. No, after all I've done. No, they are wrong. Just sensation. Just breath. Just awareness." And the tightening dissolved. A woman nearby watched this exchange silently. She had seen the monk many times before. She had admired his composure, but always from a distance. Now, she watched more closely. She noticed something unusual. He was not enduring the moment. He was inhabiting it. There was no stiffness in his posture, no forced calm, no suppressed anger. His presence was fluid, open, responsive without reaction. It unsettled her. The monk received alms from those who offered and bowed to those who did not. He did not change his rhythm to match approval or rejection. This, too, was a choice. To match rejection with withdrawal would be another arrow. To match hostility with defense would be another arrow. Equanimity was not indifference. It was precision. Later that day, as he climbed back toward the monastery, the younger monk from the nearby temple appeared again, breathless from the ascent. "They are saying terrible things now," he said urgently. "Your name is being discussed openly. This is no longer a whisper. You must speak." The monk listened fully. He did not interrupt. He did not dismiss the concern. When the younger monk finished, the older monk asked only one question. "If I speak," he said, "what suffering will end?" The younger monk opened his mouth, then closed it. The monk continued, "And what suffering will begin?" The younger monk looked away. Words, the monk said gently, do not land in empty space. They land in minds already crowded with fear and certainty. A defense will not dissolve those conditions. It will only rearrange them. But silence allows lies to grow, the younger monk insisted. "Only if silence is mistaken for emptiness," the monk replied. "Silence rooted in clarity does not support falsehood. It reveals it." The younger monk shook his head. "I don't understand." "That is all right," the monk said. "Understanding cannot be forced." That night, alone in his cell, the monk revisited the teaching of the arrows again, not as concept, but as lived experience. The first arrow hurt. He acknowledged this fully. There was loneliness now. There was exclusion. There was grief. The Buddha had never denied the reality of pain. Enlightenment did not mean numbness. To pretend otherwise would be spiritual pride. The monk allowed the pain to be present. He did not resist it. He did not dramatize it. He did not turn it into identity. Pain, when met directly, had a clean quality. It burned, but it did not poison. The second arrow, however, carried poison. It whispered thoughts like, "They deserve to know the truth. Your silence is irresponsible. You are being taken advantage of." These thoughts carried heat. They sought action. They promised relief. The monk examined them carefully. Each one assumed a self that must be defended. Each one assumed control over outcomes. Each one assumed that peace lay outside in others' beliefs. He saw clearly now. To pick up the second arrow would be to abandon his practice at the very moment it mattered most. Silence, he realized, was not passivity. It was restraint born of understanding. To restrain the impulse to defend was not weakness, it was mastery. As days passed, the monk's relationship with pain changed. It no longer felt like an enemy to be escaped, but like a teacher revealing subtle truths. Pain showed him where attachment still lived. Pain showed him how easily compassion could shrink when the self felt threatened. Pain showed him the difference between being hurt and being harmed. Hurt was inevitable. Harm was optional. One afternoon, while meditating under a tree near the monastery, the monk felt a profound stillness settle. Not the stillness of isolation, but the stillness of non-conflict. He saw, with quiet certainty, that the accusations could continue for months or years. They could even destroy his reputation completely. And yet, nothing essential would be lost. His breath would still move. Awareness would still know itself. Compassion could still arise. The arrow remained on the ground. He had not picked it up. This choice did not make life easier. It made it clearer. By choosing not to shoot himself with the second arrow, the monk had accepted a deeper discipline, one that required more courage than argument, more strength than explanation. To remain undefended in a world addicted to defense. To remain open in the presence of judgment. To allow karma to unfold without interference. This was not resignation. It was trust. As the night deepened and the monastery grew quiet, the monk sat upright, breathing evenly, his back straight, his mind alert. The world might continue to misunderstand him, but within, something was unassailable. The second arrow lay untouched. And in that restraint, a profound freedom had begun to take shape, one that no accusation could reach and no explanation could improve. Time has a way of revealing what words cannot. As the weeks passed, the monk's silence remained steady, but the world around him continued to shift. Accusations changed shape. Certainty softened into confusion for some, hardened into conviction for others. Yet through all of it, one thing remained constant. The monk did not move to correct the story being told about him. To many in the village, this became the greatest mystery of all. They had expected him to defend himself, to offer explanations, to produce proof. They were accustomed to a world where truth required witnesses, arguments, and agreement. In their experience, what could not be defended was assumed to be weak or false. But the monk lived by a different understanding. Truth, he knew, did not depend on recognition. It did not grow stronger when believed. It did not weaken when denied. Truth simply was. Each morning, as the monk sat facing the mountains, he returned to this knowing. The breath rose and fell. Sensations appeared and faded. Thoughts drifted through the mind like passing clouds. None of these required affirmation to exist. They existed by their own nature. So did truth. He reflected often on how deeply humans misunderstood this. Most people believed truth was something to be proven, defended, protected. But in doing so, they unknowingly turned truth into an object of possession. Something fragile, something that could be stolen or destroyed. Real truth was not like that. It required no witnesses because it left traces everywhere. The monk understood that every action carried its own echo. Every intention shaped the field in which it arose. This was karma, not as a system of reward and punishment, but as an unfolding logic as precise as gravity. To interfere with karma out of fear was to misunderstand it. To trust karma was not to be passive, but to be aligned with reality. In the village, however, patience was wearing thin. Some villagers grew uncomfortable with their own certainty. They had repeated the accusations often enough that they began to feel the weight of them, not because new evidence had appeared, but because something inside them felt unsettled. If he truly did wrong, one woman whispered to her friend, "Why does he seem so unchanged?" Her friend shrugged. "Perhaps he is very good at hiding it." But even as she said it, doubt flickered. Others doubled down. They spoke louder, more confidently, as if volume could replace truth. Their stories became sharper, more detailed, less connected to any real event. Each embellishment made the accusation feel more solid and more distant from its origin. The monk observed all of this without involvement. He knew that when falsehood is supported by fear, it must be maintained constantly. It requires energy, repetition, defense. Truth, by contrast, requires none of that. It remains even when ignored. One afternoon, as the monk walked along the riverbank near the village, he noticed a group of villagers arguing among themselves. Their voices carried tension, not unity. He must be guilty, one insisted. Otherwise he would have spoken by now. Another replied, or perhaps he believes we are not owed an explanation. That sounds like arrogance, a third snapped. The monk passed them quietly. No one noticed him. Later that evening, he reflected on what he had heard. Not with judgment, but with insight. They were no longer arguing about him. They were arguing about their own beliefs. This, too, was karma at work. False certainty creates division. Truth creates stillness. The monk remembered something his teacher had once said: when you do not defend yourself, you allow others to confront their own minds. Now he saw how accurate that teaching was. Had he spoken early, the villagers might have accepted his explanation and moved on. Their discomfort would have been soothed. Their assumptions would have remained hidden, unexamined. By remaining silent, he had done something far more challenging. He had left their minds alone with themselves. This was not kindness as comfort. It was kindness as honesty. At night, alone beneath the stars, the monk reflected on his own relationship with truth. He examined whether his silence was still clean, free of pride, free of quiet superiority. This vigilance was essential. Silence could easily become a weapon if fueled by ego. One could hide behind it, using restraint as a way to feel elevated above others. The monk watched carefully for this. When he noticed a fleeting thought, "They will see in time," he gently released it. The desire to be vindicated, even by karma, was still a desire. Truth did not need him to wait for recognition. Truth did not need anything. As long as his actions remained aligned with clarity and compassion, the unfolding was no longer his concern. One evening, a woman from the village climbed the monastery path alone. She stood at a distance, unsure whether to approach. The monk noticed her hesitation and waited without movement. After a long moment, she spoke. "I don't know what to believe," she said. "People say many things. You say nothing." The monk nodded. "Belief is not required." She looked surprised. "Then what is?" "Seeing," he replied simply. She frowned. "Seeing what?" "The mind," he said, "especially when it wants certainty." She was silent for a while. "Why don't you defend yourself?" The monk looked at her gently. "Because truth is not improved by my defense." She shook her head. "But people are hurting you." He smiled faintly. "They are hurting themselves." The woman left without another word, but something had shifted. Not clarity, something quieter. The monk knew better than to expect outcomes. Still, he recognized that moments like this were not random. They were part of the same unfolding. Karma did not rush. It allowed misunderstanding to mature fully until it collapsed under its own weight. In the days that followed, small cracks began to appear in the village narrative. Someone recalled a detail incorrectly. Another realized they had repeated a story they had never verified. A third noticed how often the accusations changed, depending on who told them. Nothing dramatic happened. No revelation. No confession. No sudden reversal. Just a slow erosion. Truth does not explode. It endures. The monk continued his routine, untouched in appearance, deeply attentive in essence. He did not track the village's changing moods. He did not measure progress. He did not wait for resolution. Waiting would imply expectation. Expectation would imply attachment. Instead, he lived. He swept the path. He cooked his meals. He meditated. He walked. He bowed. In this simplicity, truth expressed itself more clearly than any explanation ever could. By refusing to defend himself, the monk had made a radical choice, one that most people never consider. He had chosen alignment over persuasion, integrity over reputation, reality over narrative. Truth did not need him to speak for it. It needed him to live it. And as karma continued its quiet work, weaving together intention, action, and consequence, the monk understood something that few ever grasp. When you stop demanding that truth be seen, you finally allow it to see for itself. The weight of accusation remained, but its grip was loosening. Not because he fought it, but because truth, unprotected and unafraid, does not disappear. It waits. And in that waiting, it reveals everything. Karma does not announce itself. It does not arrive with witnesses or declarations. It moves quietly, adjusting the world one intention at a time. The monk understood this deeply, yet even understanding did not grant him foresight. He did not know how karma would unfold, only that it would, with the same certainty that a seed responds to soil and rain. From the outside, it appeared as though nothing was changing. The village still carried its doubts. The monk was still spoken of carefully, if at all. Some avoided his path entirely. Others watched him with guarded curiosity, waiting for something, a mistake, perhaps, or a sign. But beneath this still surface, karma was already at work. It began not with revelation, but with discomfort. One villager, a man who had repeated the accusations often and loudly, found himself restless at night. He would wake before dawn with a heavy chest and a racing mind. The stories he had told replayed in fragments, no longer as certainty, but as questions. How do I know this is true? Why does his silence disturb me so much? He tried to dismiss these thoughts, blaming fatigue or stress. But they returned, persistent and quiet. Another villager, a woman who had once turned away from the monk at the market, found herself remembering the moment unexpectedly. She recalled not his silence, but his eyes, calm, present, unguarded. There had been no resentment in them. The memory unsettled her. A third villager, one of the elders, began to notice the way the accusations fractured conversations. Where once the community spoke with ease, now tension lingered. People corrected one another sharply. Voices rose more quickly. The story of the monk, meant to unify suspicion, was instead revealing division. This, too, was karma. Falsehood does not rest easily. It requires maintenance, alignment, agreement. When minds are not aligned, falsehood strains under its own weight. The monk observed none of this directly. He was not watching for signs, nor listening for shifts. His attention remained where it always had, with the present moment. And yet, there were moments when the unfolding touched his life in small, tangible ways. One morning, as he descended the hill for alms, a villager who had avoided him for weeks hesitated before closing her door. She opened it again and placed a small offering into his bowl. Their eyes met briefly. She said nothing. Neither did he. But something passed between them. Not reconciliation, not forgiveness, but recognition. Another day, a child ran up the monastery steps carrying a basket of fruit. "My grandmother said to bring this," the child announced quickly, then ran off before questions could be asked. The monk accepted the basket with a bow. He did not interpret these gestures as progress. Progress implies direction. Karma implies unfolding. He remained vigilant not to turn these moments into quiet triumph. The ego, ever patient, waits for new disguises. Vindication can be as binding as accusation. He watched carefully. Was there relief in his chest when kindness returned? Was there satisfaction when doubt softened? Was there a subtle sense of being proven right? Each time such feelings appeared, he met them with the same attention he had given to pain. Seen, named, released. Meanwhile, karma continued its work elsewhere. One of the original whispers, the lost pouch of coins, resurfaced unexpectedly. The woman who had lost it found herself troubled by guilt. Though she had never accused the monk directly, she realized how easily her uncertainty had been reshaped by others. She began to speak up. "I never said he took anything," she told a neighbor firmly. "I only said I was careless." The neighbor frowned. "That's not how it sounded." "Then it was misunderstood," the woman replied. The words traveled, slowly undoing what had been done quickly. Another rumor collapsed when someone noticed inconsistencies too obvious to ignore. Details changed depending on the teller. Times did not align. Certainty weakened. Still, there was no dramatic reversal. Karma does not rush to clean up human confusion. It allows it to be seen. One evening, the monk sat outside his cell as a light rain began to fall. The sound of it against leaves and stone filled the air. He watched the droplets gather, merge, and fall again. He reflected on how karma resembled this rain. Individual drops, meaningless on their own, shaping the land over time. No single accusation had defined his experience. No single moment of silence had resolved it. It was the accumulation that mattered. The accumulation of restraint. The accumulation of awareness. The accumulation of not acting from fear. This accumulation was invisible, yet powerful. The monk understood now that karma did not merely respond to actions. It responded to how actions were held. Intention shaped outcome not only externally, but internally. By choosing not to defend himself, he had changed the quality of his own mind. There was less contraction now, less anticipation, less need to manage perception. In their place was a quiet spaciousness. He no longer thought of the accusations as something happening to him. They were simply part of the conditions through which practice deepened. In this way, karma had already completed much of its work. One afternoon, the younger monk returned again. His expression changed. "People are beginning to doubt the stories," he said. "Some are asking questions. Others are uncomfortable with how things unfolded." The older monk nodded. "Are you relieved?" the younger monk asked. The monk considered the question. "No," he said truthfully. Relief implies tension being released. The tension was never mine to carry. The younger monk looked puzzled. "Then why endure all of this?" The monk answered gently. "Because avoiding pain is not the same as ending suffering." The younger monk sat in silence for a long while. That night, as the monk lay resting, he reflected on how easily people misunderstood karma. Many believed it delivered justice in visible ways, reward here, punishment there. But karma was subtler than fairness. It did not exist to satisfy moral expectations. It existed to restore balance. The balance was not always external. Sometimes, karma worked by unsettling certainty. Sometimes, by dissolving arrogance. Sometimes, by revealing attachment. Sometimes, by stripping away false refuge. In his own life, karma had removed something he did not realize he still carried: the comfort of being trusted without question. In removing it, karma had offered something deeper: freedom without approval. The monk felt gratitude, not for the accusations, but for the clarity they had forced into view. Without them, certain layers of ego might have remained hidden indefinitely. This did not mean he sought hardship or glorified misunderstanding. It meant he no longer feared them. Fear feeds karma. Understanding frees it. As the rain stopped and the night grew still, the monk sat up and returned to meditation. The breath moved gently. The mind rested easily. Somewhere below, the village continued its quiet reckoning. Minds shifted. Conversations changed tone. Doubt gave way to reflection. The monk did not wait for outcomes. Karma did not require his attention. It moved without noise, without announcement, without demand. And in its silent movement, it was already teaching everyone involved, not just about the monk, but about themselves. The unfolding had not reached its conclusion, but the direction was clear. What had been planted in fear was now meeting the conditions of awareness. And karma, precise and patient, was responding accordingly. By the time the rains retreated and the roads dried, the monastery no longer felt like a refuge only for monks. It had become a mirror, quiet, unforgiving, and clear, reflecting the inner lives of all who came near it. Venerable Saladhara remained unchanged. He woke before dawn, swept the stone paths, tended the garden, and sat in meditation beneath the old banyan tree. He spoke only when necessary, and when he did, his words were plain and without ornament. Yet around him, the world continued to ripple with unresolved tension. The accusations against him had not disappeared. They had merely transformed. What once was loud suspicion had become subtle doubt. What if he really did something wrong? Some villagers whispered, not with anger, but with unease. If he is innocent, why does he not say so? Others wondered, their voices softened by confusion rather than judgment. Even among the monks, a quiet restlessness remained. Not everyone doubted his virtue, but many struggled to understand his choice. Silence, to them, felt incomplete. One evening, as the sun dipped low and cast long shadows across the courtyard, a young monk named Anuruddha approached the abbot. Anuruddha was sincere, disciplined, and deeply troubled. "Venerable sir," he said, bowing respectfully, "I wish to ask about something that weighs heavily on my heart." The abbot gestured for him to sit. "It concerns Venerable Saladhara," Anuruddha continued. "I understand the teaching of non-attachment. I understand patience. But I do not understand this. Why must silence be the response to falsehood? Does silence not allow injustice to grow?" The abbot did not answer immediately. He looked out toward the garden, where Saladhara was watering young saplings, his movements slow and attentive. "Tell me," Anuruddha, the abbot said finally. When someone insults you, where does the pain arise? Anuruddha hesitated. In the mind, venerable sir. And when you defend yourself, the abbot asked, what are you protecting? My name, Anuruddha replied. My dignity. And what is a name? The abbot asked gently. Anuruddha frowned. A designation, a label. The abbot nodded. And dignity, where does it reside? In how others see us, Anuruddha answered slowly, as if realizing the implications even as he spoke. The abbot smiled faintly. Venerable Saladhara is not silent because he fears truth, the abbot said. He is silent because he has seen where suffering truly begins. Anuruddha remained unconvinced. But what of karma? He asked. If lies are spoken and not corrected, do they not create harmful karma for others? Yes, the abbot replied, and so does anger. So does pride. So does the desperate need to be right. Anuruddha fell silent. That night, he could not sleep. He lay on his mat, staring into darkness, replaying moments from his own life. Times he had rushed to explain himself, to prove his innocence, to correct misunderstandings. He realized something unsettling. Even when he had won, he had not found peace. The following morning, the monastery received an unexpected visitor. A wealthy merchant from the neighboring city arrived in a finely adorned carriage. His clothes were immaculate, his posture proud, but his face carried a weariness that wealth could not conceal. He requested to speak with Venerable Saladhara. The monks exchanged glances. Word had spread that this merchant had once been among the most vocal critics of the silent monk. He had publicly accused Saladhara of deceit, of hiding behind robes and virtue. When Saladhara came to meet him, he bowed as he would to anyone else. How may I help you? The monk asked softly. The merchant hesitated. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then, unexpectedly, his shoulders sagged. I have not slept well for months, the merchant said. Your silence has followed me everywhere. Saladhara remained attentive, neither defensive nor surprised. I accused you. The merchant continued, his voice strained. I spoke harshly, confidently. People believed me. And yet the more I spoke, the heavier my heart became. He clenched his fists. I thought if you responded, if you denied it, argued, fought back, I would feel justified. Instead, your silence forced me to listen to my own thoughts. Tears welled in his eyes. I saw my own craving for control, he admitted. My need to feel superior. My fear of being insignificant. He bowed deeply, far lower than custom required. I was wrong, he said. Not about facts. I never knew the facts, but about myself. Saladhara did not smile. He did not speak words of absolution. He simply said, suffering ends when its cause is understood. The merchant wept openly. Later that day, rumors of the encounter spread through the village. Something shifted. People began to speak less about whether Saladhara was guilty or innocent. Instead, they spoke about themselves. Why did his silence anger me so much? One villager asked another. Why did I need him to defend himself? Why was I so eager to judge? The monastery felt quieter, but not empty. It was the quiet of reflection. Anuruddha approached Saladhara that evening, bowing deeply. Venerable sir, he said, may I ask you a question? Saladhara nodded. When you remained silent, Anuruddha asked, did you ever feel the urge to explain yourself? Saladhara considered the question carefully. The urge arose, he said, as all conditions arise. And why did you not follow it? Anuruddha pressed. Because I saw who wanted to speak, Saladhara replied. Anuruddha looked puzzled. The voice that wished to defend itself, the monk continued, was not wisdom. It was the self-image, fragile, temporary, dependent on approval. To speak from that place would only strengthen it. Anuruddha's breath caught. Then silence, he said slowly, was not passivity. No, Saladhara said. It was restraint. That night, Anuruddha sat in meditation longer than ever before. He observed his thoughts as they arose. Desires to be respected, fears of being misunderstood, fantasies of vindication. For the first time, he did not chase them away. He simply watched. And in that watching, he felt something loosen. He understood now. Silence was not the absence of action. It was the absence of ego-driven reaction. And karma, true karma, was not shaped only by what happened, but by how the mind responded. As the moon rose high above the monastery, Its light fell upon the banyan tree, the stone paths, and the quiet figure of venerable Saladhara sitting beneath the open sky. He had never defended himself. Yet through his silence, countless others had been compelled to confront the one adversary no argument could defeat: their own mind. The seasons had begun their quiet rhythm. Rain softened the earth, the sun warmed the stones, and the wind carried the scent of jasmine through the monastery courtyards. Life continued in its usual cycles, yet the monk's inner landscape had transformed in ways imperceptible to the untrained eye. Venerable Saladhara's name was still spoken in the village, sometimes in whispers, sometimes in gossip, but the energy surrounding it had changed. What had once been sharp and accusatory had become a subtle, uneasy curiosity. People watched him not to judge him, but to reflect on their own hearts. This was the effect of silence, the mirror of awareness that showed everyone their own projections. Saladhara rose with the first light, as always, and moved through the monastery with deliberate care. He did not hurry, he did not linger. Every action, from sweeping the stone paths to tending the small vegetable garden, was performed with mindfulness, a rhythm that belonged neither to obligation nor to pride. He sat under the ancient banyan tree, folding his legs and settling into meditation. Breath in, breath out. Thoughts appeared, as they always did. Memories of the accusations, the gossip, and the subtle resentments of the villagers drifted past. He did not cling, he did not repel. He watched them as clouds pass over a still lake. It was in these moments, quiet and unobtrusive, that the deepest understanding revealed itself. The monk saw that the freedom he sought had never been in changing the minds of others. It was never about defending a name, protecting an identity, or persuading someone to believe. True freedom lay in letting go of attachment, letting go of expectation, letting go of the self that demands recognition. He recalled the teaching of the Buddha, the story of the two arrows. The first arrow is unavoidable, the suffering that life naturally brings. The second arrow is optional, the suffering we manufacture when we resist what is. For Saladhara, the second arrow had been the desire to defend himself, to assert his innocence, to control perception. He had not picked it up, and in that choice, he discovered an unexpected liberation. Walking slowly along the path that led to the village, he noticed the subtle tension in the air. The villagers still spoke his name, but their words now carried the tremor of self-awareness rather than certainty. One woman, who had been among the first to spread rumors, approached him quietly, placing a small bowl of rice at his feet. "I do not know if you will forgive me," she whispered, avoiding his eyes. "But I see now I have carried my own fears, not the truth about you." Saladhara bowed gently. "Truth does not require my forgiveness. It requires only your awareness." She left, her steps lighter, as if a burden had been lifted. The monk remained, observing the ripple of understanding that arose not from words, but from recognition, a silent acknowledgement that each person must face their own mind. In the days that followed, Saladhara's life continued much as before. Monks trained under his guidance, learning not from lectures but from the presence he embodied. The villagers continued their lives, yet the energy surrounding the monk had shifted. Accusations no longer carried the same sting. Doubt no longer produced agitation. The world continued, yet he remained unshaken, a living demonstration that freedom is not found in external circumstances, but in the mastery of one's own mind. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the mountains, painting the sky in shades of amber and rose, Saladhara sat beneath the banyan tree and reflected on the journey of silence he had undertaken. He saw clearly now how much he had learned, not from defending himself, but from observing the unfolding of life as it truly was. He had witnessed the ego's desire to be recognized, to be validated, to be understood. He had seen how attachment to reputation could generate suffering far more intense than any external criticism. He had experienced firsthand how the release of defense allowed karma to move without interference, allowing others to confront their own minds and patterns. The realization settled deeply within him. To let go of control is not to surrender passively, but to act from a place of understanding, clarity, and compassion. By refusing to engage in the defense of a self that is impermanent, he had preserved the mind's freedom and created space for insight to emerge. That night, a gentle rain fell. The sound of droplets against leaves was a reminder of the impermanence of all things. Each drop rose from clouds, fell to earth, and disappeared. Nothing clung, nothing resisted. And in the same way, Saladhara's heart had learned to move with life, neither grasping nor rejecting, simply existing in harmony with the flow of conditions. In the following weeks, subtle changes continued to emerge in the village. People found themselves questioning not the monk's actions, but their own reactions. Words that once carried certainty now met reflection. Impulses to judge and accuse were tempered by awareness. Without the monk's direct involvement, the patterns of misunderstanding began to dissolve quietly, naturally, like mist lifted by the morning sun. A young boy approached Saladhara one morning, curious and earnest. "Venerable sir," he asked, "how do you stay so calm when people say so many things about you?" The monk looked at him, eyes serene. "I am calm because I do not hold on to what is not mine to hold. The world speaks. That is its nature. My mind is where peace begins. When I do not cling to being misunderstood, I am free." The boy considered this, tilting his head. "So you're not upset?" "I observe," the monk replied. "I do not identify with anger or fear. They are not mine to carry permanently." The boy nodded slowly, a small smile forming. Even at this young age, he sensed the power of presence, the weightlessness that comes from not carrying unnecessary burdens. Days turned into months. Saladhara's life remained simple, yet the depth of his understanding grew. Each act of compassion, each moment of non-reactive observation, became a testament to the freedom that arises when one releases the second arrow. The monk realized, finally, that defending oneself is not the path to truth. Engagement through argument, persuasion, or explanation may satisfy the ego, but it does not liberate the mind. Silence, when rooted in clarity and awareness, becomes a force far stronger than any spoken word. It reveals truth without distortion, allows karma to unfold without obstruction, and provides a mirror for all beings to observe their own patterns. By letting go, Saladhara had discovered freedom, not the temporary relief of having others agree, but the lasting peace that comes from aligning one's own mind with reality. And in this freedom, he became a living embodiment of the teaching he had silently carried for so long. The world may misunderstand you. The mind may resist peace. Rumors may flourish. Yet true freedom lies in letting go of the need to defend, the need to control, the need to be seen as right. In surrender, clarity emerges. In silence, truth speaks. In letting go, the mind is unbound. As the final light of sunset faded and the stars began to glimmer in the night sky, Saladhara closed his eyes and breathed deeply. The mountains, the river, the monastery, and the village rested in quiet balance. And within him, a profound liberation unfolded, timeless, gentle, and unwavering. The culmination of a journey of silence, patience, and the wisdom of letting go. The monk had not defended himself. He had not argued. He had not sought validation. And in this, he had discovered the greatest freedom of all. Life in the village had not returned to complete normalcy, yet the air had subtly shifted. The sharp edges of suspicion had softened, replaced by a quiet awareness that unsettled the heart more than any accusation ever could. Villagers walked the streets more mindfully, pausing before speaking, feeling the weight of their own judgments. Their thoughts now had to pass through the mirror of their own awareness before leaving their lips. Venerable Saladhara continued his daily routines with the same gentle discipline. Each movement, sweeping the stone paths, tending the small herb garden, preparing tea, was performed with presence, yet without attachment. He did not hurry. He did not linger unnecessarily. Every action was infused with a kind of attentiveness that radiated outward, affecting all who observed him. One morning, a violent storm swept over the mountains and the village. Wind tore through the trees, sending leaves and branches cascading across the paths. Rain fell in torrents, turning the dirt roads into rivers of mud. The villagers retreated to their homes, shouting over the roar of the storm to protect their belongings. Fear and frustration mingled in the air. And yet, the monk walked. He walked calmly along the path that led from the monastery to the village market, a simple cloak over his robes, feet bare yet steady against the slick stones. He moved as if the storm were part of his own breath, neither resisting nor fleeing. A few villagers watched in astonishment. How can he be so calm? One muttered to another, clutching their child tightly. Does he not fear the storm? The others shook their head. Perhaps he is protected by his faith. Saladhara passed them without a word, bowing slightly, his eyes serene. To the casual observer, it might have seemed as if he were detached, impervious to danger. But the truth was deeper. He was aware of the storm, of the wind, the rain, and the treacherous ground, yet he did not let these external conditions disturb the mind within. Arriving at the market, he saw merchants struggling to cover their goods and children clinging to frightened parents. Some villagers yelled at each other in panic, blaming someone for failing to secure property or livestock. The chaos seemed boundless, yet Saladhara remained calm, moving through the tumult with careful steps, offering silent assistance where needed, a hand to steady a cart, guidance to frightened animals, a reassuring gesture to children. A young woman approached him, drenched and shivering. "Venerable sir," she called over the storm, "how can you be so unshaken? Do you not fear the wind, the rain, the danger?" Saladhara looked at her with soft eyes. "Fear is natural," he said, "but it is not necessary to let fear control the mind." The woman shivered and looked down, unsure what to say. The monk continued, "The storm is outside. The mind is inside. If the mind remains still, no external turbulence can destroy it." The woman's lips quivered. "But how can one stay still when the world is in chaos?" "By seeing clearly," Saladhara replied. "By recognizing that events themselves are not suffering. It is the mind's reaction, attachment, resistance, craving, that creates the storm within. Calm does not come from changing circumstances, but from changing the mind." The words sank slowly into her consciousness, as if a seed planted in wet soil. She nodded, a faint smile emerging despite the wind and rain. As the day progressed, the storm showed no sign of letting up. Villagers worked tirelessly to secure roofs, cover market goods, and shelter their families. Some despaired, others argued. Yet wherever Saladhara went, a quiet influence followed. His movements were unhurried, his voice gentle when he spoke, and his presence reminded those around him that not all turbulence needed to be mirrored in the heart. That evening, after the storm had passed, the villagers gathered in the central square. Debris was scattered across the streets, roofs were damaged, and livestock had been frightened, but no lives had been lost. They began to clean, organize, and help one another. An elderly man approached the monk. "Venerable sir," he said, "all day, we struggled in the storm, and yet you moved as if nothing disturbed you. How is it possible?" Saladhara bowed slightly. "The storm is temporary. The mind is enduring. If we cling to fear, anger, or resistance, we create suffering. If we observe carefully, act mindfully, and let go of attachment, we remain calm regardless of circumstance." The elderly man shook his head slowly, a mixture of awe and confusion on his face. "I have lived 70 years, he said, "and never understood this until now." "Understanding is not always immediate," Saladhara replied. "It grows like the roots of a tree, slowly and quietly, beneath the surface. The storm may fall many times before the roots take hold." Across the square, Anuruddha watched silently. The young monk had long admired Saladhara's discipline, but the storm revealed something deeper. It was not simply a practice of restraint or patience. It was the embodiment of insight into the nature of reality itself, the impermanence of conditions, the futility of clinging, and the possibility of freedom within even the harshest circumstances. That night, as the village settled into silence, Anuruddha approached Saladhara. "Venerable sir," he said, "today I saw people respond to your calm. They followed your example without even realizing it. You did nothing extraordinary, and yet everything changed. How can this be?" Saladhara smiled softly. "What you saw was not the result of me. It was the result of what was already within them. Calm does not create calm. Calm reveals what is already possible. By remaining steady, I simply provide a mirror. The mind reflects what it observes." Anuruddha remained thoughtful. "So our own peace depends on observing, not on reacting?" "Yes," the monk said. "Peace is not given by others, nor imposed. It is cultivated by understanding, by letting go, and by seeing clearly. The storm outside is temporary. The storm within is voluntary. The young monk bowed, deeply moved. He realized that the practice of Saladhara was not passive resignation, but active wisdom. It required awareness, courage, and patience. It demanded constant vigilance to avoid being swept away by the currents of ego, desire, and fear. In the following days, the villagers continued to reflect on the events of the storm. Stories were shared not to gossip, but to examine their own reactions, to understand where fear and attachment had driven them. The chaos had become a teacher, and Saladhara had shown them the path, not through words alone, but through the living demonstration of calm within turbulence. Even the merchants who had once accused him returned quietly to the monastery, some with offerings, others simply with curiosity. Each came seeking understanding, yet left with insight into themselves. Saladhara continued his meditation beneath the banyan tree, feeling the wind move through its branches and the earth solid beneath his feet. He did not claim credit for the transformation in others. He did not anticipate praise or recognition. He simply existed in alignment with the truth he had discovered, that freedom, calm, and clarity arise not from defending oneself, but from understanding the mind, letting go of attachment, and living in harmony with the flow of life. And in that stillness, beneath the vast sky, Saladhara found something profound, a deep, abiding peace that no storm could disturb, a peace that existed not in the absence of difficulty, but in the embrace of reality as it is. The storm had passed, yet the lesson endured. Calm, like truth, needs no witness. Peace, like freedom, requires no defense. And in the quiet unfolding of life, those who observe carefully can see the greatest teachings in the smallest actions, the steadfast presence of a monk who never defended himself, and the transformative power of silence. The days had grown longer, and the air carried the warmth of early summer. The village, once anxious and divided, had begun to feel a subtle shift in its rhythm. Life moved forward, yet the memory of past accusations lingered, not as resentment, but as a quiet teacher. It was in this space that Venerable Saladhara continued to practice, embodying the silent wisdom that had transformed his own mind, and, in ways he could not measure, the minds of those around him. The monk rose before dawn, as always, and walked through the monastery grounds. The dew clung to the leaves, sparkling in the first light. Birds sang their morning songs without concern, their melody uninterrupted by judgment or expectation. Saladhara observed them, noting how effortlessly they navigated the world, responding to conditions without resistance. He understood that their freedom was a mirror for human possibility. Today, however, his attention was drawn to the village itself. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, the effects of his silence and restraint were rippling outward. Conversations in the market carried a softer tone. People who had once whispered accusations now hesitated before speaking, their words tempered by awareness. Even children, playful and unknowing, had begun to observe the careful attentiveness of their elders, reflecting the subtle influence of mindfulness in everyday life. A young merchant approached the monastery steps, carrying a basket of fruits for alms. He was the same merchant who had once publicly accused the monk, yet his demeanor had changed. There was humility in his posture, a quiet acknowledgement of past mistakes. "Venerable sir," the merchant said, bowing deeply, "I bring this offering in gratitude. Your example has shown me the error of my own ways. I now see that my anger and pride served only to bind me in suffering." Saladhara accepted the basket with a slight bow, his eyes calm and unassuming. He spoke softly, "Your suffering is yours to observe and release. Awareness is the first step, compassion is the next." The merchant nodded, a tear forming in the corner of his eye. "I wish to learn, Venerable sir. I wish to understand how to live without harming others, or myself." And so, the ripple began. One by one, villagers came, not for sermons or teachings, but simply to witness the presence of a mind untroubled by ego. Each interaction, though seemingly small, planted seeds of awareness. A woman brought freshly baked bread. A farmer placed a bundle of herbs. They came not out of obligation, but because the monk had inspired reflection, showing through his actions the possibility of patience, understanding, and self-restraint. Saladhara did not attempt to control the lessons they received. He did not give lectures or dictate behavior. He simply existed in harmony with the present moment, allowing his presence to speak louder than words. He had come to understand that true teaching arises naturally, without effort or coercion, when one embodies wisdom. One afternoon, a group of young monks gathered around him. Among them was Anuruddha, who had grown into his own practice over the months, learning to observe the mind without attachment. "Venerable sir," Anuruddha began, "how do you remain so steady when the world is filled with turmoil? Even today, I saw merchants quarrel over prices, and yet you walked among them without agitation. How do you maintain such calm?" Saladhara looked at him, eyes soft and attentive. Calm is not something to be maintained. It is the natural state when the mind is not entangled in the web of craving and aversion. The world will always bring conditions. The mind creates suffering by clinging or resisting. To be steady is simply to observe without identifying with these reactions. Anuruddha frowned thoughtfully. But is it not difficult to remain detached when insulted or wronged? The monk nodded slowly. Difficult, yes, if one clings to the self that desires defense or recognition. But when the self is seen as impermanent, a collection of conditions rather than a fixed identity, there is no need to defend it. Freedom arises not from changing the world, but from changing how we relate to it. The young monks listened, absorbing the quiet authority of his words. Yet it was not the words alone that moved them, but the consistency of Saladhara's presence. Every gesture, every breath, every mindful action conveyed a teaching deeper than any verbal instruction could. That evening, as the sun dipped behind the hills, the villagers gathered at the monastery once more. Word had spread of a man in a neighboring town who had endured great loss and public humiliation. Seeking solace, he traveled to observe Saladhara, curious about the monk who faced accusations with unbroken equanimity. The man arrived, weary and burdened by the weight of his own ego. He bowed before Saladhara and spoke. "I have come because I have heard tales of your patience and understanding. I have lived a life filled with anger, pride, and fear. I wish to learn how to release these burdens, but I do not know where to begin." Saladhara smiled gently. "Begin with observation. Watch your mind as it arises, and do not cling. Observe your anger, your pride, your fear. See that they are impermanent, arising from conditions beyond your control. Respond with clarity, not reaction. Act from awareness, not from attachment." The man listened, but comprehension did not come instantly. Learning, he realized, was not a matter of words, but of seeing. In the quiet of the evening, watching Saladhara's serene movements, he felt a subtle shift in his own heart, a loosening of the tightness that had gripped him for years. As the night deepened, the stars appearing one by one, Saladhara remained seated beneath the banyan tree. The village, the monks, the visitors, they all moved within the same conditions, yet each carried within them the potential for awakening. The monk understood that the ripples of awareness he had set in motion were beyond his control. He could not dictate how others would perceive them, only cultivate his own mind. It was then that he noticed a subtle pattern emerging. Individuals who had once clung tightly to resentment or pride were beginning to act with mindfulness. Words of anger softened into careful observation. Impulses to react immediately gave way to reflection. Actions, once driven by ego, became measured by awareness. The ripple, he realized, was no longer confined to his immediate presence. It was extending outward, touching lives in ways unseen. The impact of silence, restraint, and conscious action was profound. Those who observed the monk without judgment began to observe themselves without judgment. And in that self-observation, they discovered the seeds of liberation. Anuruddha approached Saladhara as the night wind whispered through the branches. "Venerable sir," he asked quietly, "how can we nurture this awareness in others without forcing it upon them?" The monk considered this. Awareness cannot be forced. It can only be invited. When the mind is free of agitation and the heart is uncluttered by ego, presence itself becomes the invitation. People sense it, and they may choose to follow it. The ripple grows naturally, without coercion, without expectation. The young monk bowed, understanding dawning within him. He realized that teaching was not an act of persuasion, but of embodiment. True wisdom did not shout or argue. It simply existed, revealing the path through its presence. By the end of the night, the village lay quiet under a sky filled with stars. The storm of misunderstanding, once fierce and consuming, had dissipated. In its place, a calm clarity had begun to settle, fragile yet enduring. Saladhara closed his eyes, breathing deeply, feeling the interconnectedness of all beings, the villagers, the monks, the travelers, and himself. He had not defended his name. He had not demanded recognition. He had not sought to be proven right. And yet, through his silence, patience, and unwavering presence, he had sparked transformation. The ripple of awareness had begun, and though its path was unpredictable, its source was steadfast, rooted in the mind of a monk who understood that freedom is found not in controlling the world, but in observing it, responding with clarity, and letting go of the illusions of self. In that stillness, beneath the banyan tree, the world continued to turn. The villagers slept peacefully, the monks rested in their cells, and Saladhara sat quietly, witnessing the subtle, enduring power of awareness. A ripple, small and unassuming, had become a wave of insight, proof that the deepest transformations arise not from words, defense, or assertion, but from the calm and attentive heart. And in that calm, the truth revealed itself. The mind, when free from the grasp of ego, is a mirror of the universe, reflecting clearly, without distortion, the path to freedom, wisdom, and enduring peace. The seasons had shifted once again. Autumn approached the village, painting the hills with shades of gold, crimson, and amber. The wind carried the scent of fallen leaves and the distant smoke of hearths, signaling the slow, natural rhythm of life. Within the monastery, Venerable Saladhara continued his daily practice, embodying the silent wisdom that had long been the source of curiosity, reflection, and transformation for those around him. Though the accusations and misunderstandings that had once weighed upon him had faded in the outer world, the deeper work, both within himself and within the minds of the villagers, continued. The ripples of awareness he had set in motion had grown, subtle yet profound, affecting behavior, perception, and consciousness in ways that could not be forced or predicted. One morning, as the first light of dawn touched the monastery, Saladhara walked slowly through the garden. Dew sparkled on the leaves like tiny gems, and the soft murmur of a nearby stream provided a gentle soundtrack to the awakening day. He observed the young saplings he had planted months ago. Their roots had strengthened, their branches had grown, and some even bore early fruit. He smiled quietly, recognizing a metaphor in their growth. Change and transformation require time, patience, and a steady, nurturing presence. Anuruddha, now more composed and disciplined than in earlier months, approached him. "Venerable sir," he began, "I have observed the villagers and even the merchants who once accused you. They have changed, yet they are not entirely free from fear or attachment. How do we help these seeds grow fully?" Saladhara regarded him with soft, unwavering eyes. "We do not force growth," he said. "We can only provide the conditions. Water, sunlight, protection from harm. These are all we can offer. The seeds themselves choose when to sprout and in which direction to grow. The same is true of understanding. We may provide guidance, presence, and compassion, but insight must arise within the mind of each being." Anuruddha reflected silently on these words. He realized that teaching was not an act of coercion or argument, but of embodiment. Saladhara's calm, his patience, and his unwavering restraint had served as fertile soil in which the seeds of wisdom could take root. The villagers and monks had been drawn not by force, but by example. That day, a procession of visitors arrived, travelers, villagers from distant towns, and even those who had once doubted or spoken ill of the monk. They came to witness his presence, to seek understanding, and perhaps to reconcile with their own hearts. Among them was a wealthy landowner who had once publicly denounced Saladhara. His pride had been considerable, his anger sharp, yet over time he had come to recognize the emptiness of his resentment. Now he approached the monk with humility, offering not words of accusation, but an acknowledgement of his own transformation. "Venerable sir," he said, bowing deeply, I come to admit that my actions were driven by fear, pride, and misunderstanding. I sought to control and judge, yet in doing so, I only bound myself to suffering. Your presence has shown me a way to release it." Saladhara accepted his bow without comment, offering only a gentle nod. "Awareness and reflection are the first steps," he said softly. "The rest is natural. Compassion and understanding flow from the mind when it is free of attachment." Around the monastery, similar interactions unfolded. A young mother who had once whispered false accusations now asked for guidance in teaching her children patience and mindfulness. A merchant who had competed aggressively with neighbors offered assistance and shared resources, reflecting the subtle influence of observing a mind free from ego-driven reaction. Each encounter demonstrated the profound yet understated power of the monk's example. As the sun climbed, Saladhara gathered the monks beneath the banyan tree. They formed a quiet circle, attentive, ready to listen, not only to words, but to the presence and wisdom emanating from him. True transformation, Saladhara began, is not measured by the absence of difficulty, nor by the approval of others. It is measured by the clarity of the mind, the gentleness of the heart, and the willingness to observe without clinging. Those who come seeking change will find it only when they recognize that the source of suffering lies within the mind, not outside. A young monk, eager yet uncertain, asked, "Venerable Sir, how do we guide others without imposing our understanding upon them?" Saladhara smiled faintly. "By embodying it. Every act of restraint, every moment of compassion, every instance of patience is a teaching. Words may instruct, but presence transforms. We provide conditions, the mind provides insight. The ripple cannot be forced. It can only be witnessed and nurtured." The monks nodded, absorbing the depth of his guidance. They understood now that their role was not to convince, correct, or judge, but to embody the principles they sought to convey: clarity, non-attachment, and compassion. In the late afternoon, as the sun began to dip behind the mountains, the villagers gathered once more, this time bringing offerings not out of obligation, but from sincere respect and gratitude. The air was filled with a gentle harmony, the kind that arises not from perfection, but from the collective effort of minds learning to observe, reflect, and release. Saladhara walked among them, greeting each with a calm nod and a soft gaze. There were no grand proclamations, no demands for recognition, no insistence on being right. Yet in his quiet presence, every person felt a subtle shift, as if a weight they had carried for years had lifted slightly. As night fell, the monastery became a sanctuary of stillness. The villagers departed slowly, leaving behind a sense of calm and introspection. The moon rose above the hills, casting silver light on the banyan tree beneath which Saladhara sat. He closed his eyes, breathing deeply, feeling the interconnectedness of all beings. Every act of mindfulness, every moment of restraint, every choice to let go had contributed to the subtle transformation that now rippled through the village and beyond. He understood that these seeds of awareness, planted through patience and embodied wisdom, would continue to grow long after he was gone. Anuruddha approached him once more, bowing deeply. "Venerable Sir," he said, "I see now how your silence, patience, and presence have changed more than words ever could. It is as if you have shown us the path by living it, not by declaring it." Saladhara's eyes were gentle and unwavering. The path is always present. It cannot be given, only realized. Each mind must water its own seeds. Each heart must recognize its own patterns. Our role is to cultivate, not to control. The young monk absorbed this lesson fully, feeling a profound sense of gratitude and purpose. He understood now that wisdom was not a possession, but a living, unfolding process, a ripple extending from mind to mind, heart to heart, action to action. And so, beneath the banyan tree, surrounded by the soft sounds of the night, the rustle of leaves, the distant flow of the stream, the occasional cry of a night bird, Venerable Saladhara sat in quiet reflection. He had not defended himself against accusations. He had not sought validation. He had not demanded recognition. And yet, through his steadfast presence and unwavering restraint, he had sparked a transformation that touched countless lives. The ripple of awareness continued to expand, reaching beyond the monastery, beyond the village, and into the hearts of all who observed or heard of the monk who never defended himself. In the stillness of his mind, he saw the truth, that freedom, compassion, and wisdom are born not from argument or defense, but from clarity, presence, and the courage to let go of the ego. The seeds he had planted, through silence, patience, and mindful action, would grow quietly, persistently, and naturally. And in the gentle unfolding of life, the world would continue to reflect the profound, enduring power of a mind that is unbound, a heart that is open, and a spirit that has embraced the liberation of letting go. The soft haze of morning light settled over the village, spilling across rooftops and fields like a gentle promise. Autumn's colors deepened, with golden leaves fluttering from the trees and the distant hills painted in warm amber and crimson. The air was crisp, carrying the scent of earth and smoke from the hearths of villagers preparing for the day. Within this tranquil setting, Venerable Saladhara moved quietly through the monastery grounds, his presence calm yet purposeful, embodying the teachings of non-attachment, patience, and inner freedom. Though months had passed since the height of conflict, the village had not completely forgotten the turbulence that had once surrounded the monk. Yet, in its place, a subtle transformation had taken root, a transformation not enforced by argument or command, but by the living example of a mind free from defense, a heart unburdened by ego. Saladhara walked past the stone paths he had swept countless times, observing the morning rituals of the monks, the soft hum of villagers beginning their work, and the young children playing near the stream. Each scene reflected the quiet influence of mindful presence. Today, however, the air carried a sense of anticipation. A group of villagers had gathered, some of whom had once been the harshest critics. They approached Saladhara with humility and curiosity, drawn not by obligation, but by a desire to understand the profound calm that seemed to radiate from him. Among them was the young woman who had first approached him months ago, seeking forgiveness for spreading rumors, and the wealthy landowner who had once publicly denounced him. "Venerable sir," the landowner said, bowing deeply, "we have come together to understand what we have witnessed in your actions. We have seen patience, compassion, and clarity that we ourselves have not yet cultivated. We wish to learn how to live in harmony, how to release anger and judgment, and how to act with awareness in our daily lives." Saladhara accepted their bows with a gentle nod. His voice, soft yet unwavering, carried the weight of experience and insight. "True harmony," he said, "does not come from the suppression of anger, nor from imposing virtue upon others. It comes from understanding the nature of the mind, from observing thoughts and emotions without attachment, and from acting with clarity and compassion." A murmur of reflection swept through the villagers. Some nodded slowly, others lowered their heads in contemplation. The monk continued, "We often believe that defending ourselves or asserting our rightness is necessary to live in peace. But the mind clings to identity, to ego, and through this clinging, it creates suffering. Letting go is not surrender to chaos. It is the recognition that peace arises when the mind is free from unnecessary attachments." One of the young mothers stepped forward, holding the hand of her small child. "Venerable sir," she said, "how can we teach these lessons to our children? How can we nurture patience and awareness in a world that often encourages conflict and pride?" Saladhara looked at her, eyes gentle yet focused. "Children learn not only from words, but from the actions and presence of those around them. If you respond with awareness rather than reaction, with compassion rather than judgment, your children will absorb these qualities naturally. Teach them through example, and the seeds of wisdom will grow quietly, persistently." The villagers listened, realizing the depth of the monk's insight. It was not the words alone, but the alignment of his life with the principles he espoused that made the teaching tangible. Each breath, each step, each small act of mindful attention served as a living lesson, a demonstration of how one can navigate life without being ensnared by ego or anger. Later, as the sun climbed higher, a group of young monks gathered around Saladhara beneath the banyan tree. Their eyes were attentive, their posture reverent. "Venerable sir," one asked, How do we sustain our own practice when faced with opposition or misunderstanding? How do we maintain equanimity in the face of ego-driven conflict? Saladhara considered the question carefully. Equanimity does not arise from the absence of challenge, he replied. It arises from clarity of mind and the recognition of impermanence. When criticism, anger, or misjudgment arises, observe it. See it as a passing cloud, not a permanent storm. Do not engage the ego. Do not chase validation. Freedom is the choice to remain centered, regardless of the turbulence outside. Another young monk asked, and when others suffer because of misunderstanding or malice, how do we act with compassion without attachment? The monk's gaze softened. Compassion without attachment is understanding that all beings act according to their conditioning. We may assist, guide, or protect, but without expectation of gratitude or recognition. We act because it is the natural expression of awareness, not to satisfy the ego. This is the essence of the circle of compassion, responding with clarity and kindness, yet remaining unattached to outcome. Throughout the day, Saladhara moved among the villagers, witnessing moments of small reconciliation. Former critics approached him privately, offering apologies, gifts, or simply their presence. Some shared personal reflections, realizing the ways in which their own fears and attachments had driven their actions. Each interaction demonstrated the ripple effect of awareness, the capacity for one mind, lived fully in the principles of patience, non-attachment, and insight, to influence countless others without coercion. In the late afternoon, a young boy approached the monk. "Venerable sir," he said softly, "I saw how you helped the merchants and villagers during the storm months ago. I want to be like you. I want to stay calm when people are angry or unfair. How can I do that?" Saladhara knelt slightly, bringing his eyes level with the boy. Calm is not something you become overnight. It is cultivated through observation, practice, and understanding. Begin by watching your thoughts. Notice when anger or fear arises, and do not cling to it. Breathe. Respond with awareness. Each time you practice, the mind becomes stronger, the heart lighter. Over time, the calm within you will become steady, like a river flowing quietly through all seasons. The boy nodded slowly, absorbing the lesson. So it is not about stopping anger completely, but about how we respond to it. Exactly, Saladhara replied. Emotions will arise. They are natural, but we are not the emotions. By observing without identification, by acting with awareness and compassion, we maintain freedom and clarity. As evening approached, the villagers gathered once more around the banyan tree. Lanterns were lit, casting warm, flickering light across their faces. Saladhara addressed them, not as a teacher imposing instruction, but as a witness to the unfolding journey of understanding that was already present in each mind. The circle of compassion begins with the mind, he said. When we observe without attachment, when we act with clarity, and when we respond with kindness without expectation, we create a ripple. This ripple touches lives, transforms hearts, and spreads quietly, persistently. The world changes not because we demand it, but because we embody the principles we wish to see. A hush fell over the gathering. Villagers, monks, and travelers alike absorbed the meaning of his words, realizing the depth of the teaching. They understood that the transformation they had witnessed, the softening of anger, the growth of patience, the emergence of mindful awareness, was not miraculous, but the natural consequence of one life lived in alignment with truth. As night deepened, Saladhara sat beneath the banyan tree in meditation, the lantern light casting soft shadows around him. He reflected on the journey that had begun with accusation, misunderstanding, and ego-driven conflict. From those challenges had emerged insight, freedom, and the cultivation of compassion that radiated outward like concentric circles on water. He understood, finally, that the true circle of compassion extended beyond immediate perception. It reached into hearts yet unawakened, minds yet unobservant, and lives yet untouched. Through patience, presence, and the refusal to defend the self, he had demonstrated the profound truth of karma. Actions rooted in clarity and non-attachment cultivate ripples that endure long after the moment has passed. And so, beneath the starlit sky, with the gentle rustle of leaves and the distant murmur of the river, Venerable Saladhara rested in serene awareness. The seeds of transformation had been sown. They would continue to grow, nurtured by mindfulness, compassion, and understanding. The circle of awareness and freedom, once sparked by silence and restraint, now encompassed the village, its people, and all who would encounter the legacy of a monk who never defended himself, yet transformed countless lives through the quiet power of presence. The morning sun rose slowly over the mountains, bathing the village and the monastery in a golden light that seemed to touch every stone, every tree, and every living being with a quiet warmth. The air was crisp, carrying with it the scent of autumn leaves, the faint hum of bees, and the gentle flow of the stream that wound through the village fields. For the first time in many months, the villagers awoke with a sense of calm anticipation, a subtle recognition that something profound was unfolding, though they could not yet name it. Venerable Saladhara, as always, had risen before dawn. His robes were simple, his posture serene, and his steps deliberate as he walked through the monastery grounds. The bamboo grove swayed gently in the morning breeze, creating a soft rustling sound, and the birds sang their morning songs without expectation or judgment. Saladhara paused to observe them, breathing deeply, aware of the impermanence of every sound, every movement, every sensation. Months of patient practice, silent presence, and unwavering restraint had transformed not only the village, but also his own inner landscape. The monk reflected upon the journey that had begun with accusation and misunderstanding, the challenges he had faced without defending himself, and the subtle ripples of awareness that had gradually spread through the hearts and minds of all who had come into contact with him. Each moment of suffering he had endured, every insult he had absorbed without retaliation, had been a seed of insight, an opportunity to observe ego, to understand karma, and to cultivate compassion. That morning, as the villagers and monks gathered beneath the ancient banyan tree, Saladhara felt a quiet resonance in the air, a collective readiness, a stillness that spoke of the culmination of countless small awakenings. People who had once harbored anger, fear, or doubt now approached him not out of obligation, but with genuine curiosity and respect. Their eyes reflected recognition not only of the monk's calm and wisdom, but of their own potential to transform through mindfulness and understanding. Anuruddha, standing nearby, observed the gathering with quiet reverence. Over the months, he had learned the profound lessons of patience, non-attachment, and mindful awareness under Saladhara's guidance. Today, he sensed that the teaching was reaching a culmination, not in words, not in instruction, but in the lived presence of the monk, whose every breath, every gesture, every glance carried the weight of awakened understanding. A young villager stepped forward, trembling slightly, holding a small offering of freshly picked flowers. "Venerable sir," she said softly, "we have witnessed your patience and compassion, your refusal to defend yourself, and the peace that arises from letting go. How can we cultivate such wisdom within ourselves?" Saladhara looked at her with gentle eyes. "You plant seeds that will bear fruit in their own time." The villagers listened intently. Each word seemed to settle into their consciousness, stirring reflections on past actions, regrets, and moments of unwise speech or judgment. The monk's voice, soft yet firm, guided them not through instruction alone, but through the embodiment of the principle he spoke, that freedom comes not from controlling the world, but from mastering the self. A merchant who had once publicly accused Saladhara stepped forward, bowing deeply. "Venerable sir," he said, "I see now that my pride, anger, and desire for recognition brought me only suffering. Through your example, I have learned patience, humility, and the power of presence. I am grateful for the opportunity to witness your teaching." Saladhara inclined his head. Awareness transforms. It does not demand, it does not coerce. Each mind must cultivate its own insight. Your recognition of the truth is the fruition of the seeds you have planted through reflection and openness. Throughout the morning, the village seemed to move in a unified rhythm of reflection, reconciliation, and gentle mindfulness. Children played quietly, observing the subtle interactions of their elders. Merchants, farmers, and laborers spoke with soft tones, careful to respond rather than react. Even the most skeptical villagers began to notice the effects of conscious awareness on their own hearts, realizing that the monks' silent teachings had permeated their lives in ways they had never expected. By midday, the sun shone brightly overhead, illuminating the courtyard where the villagers, monks, and travelers had gathered. Saladhara sat beneath the banyan tree, the leaves casting dappled shadows across his calm face. He closed his eyes, inhaling deeply, feeling the rhythm of the earth beneath him, the interconnectedness of all beings, and the flow of life that neither began nor ended with him. Anuruddha approached, kneeling respectfully. "Venerable sir," he said, "through your example, we have witnessed transformation not by argument, not by defense, but by presence. What is the final lesson we must carry with us?" Saladhara's eyes opened slowly, reflecting clarity and compassion. "The final lesson," he said, "is that ego is a construct, a collection of attachments and identifications. Karma is the natural law of cause and effect, not punishment, but the mirror of our actions. By releasing attachment, observing without judgment, and responding with mindful compassion, we free ourselves. Freedom does not come from being right or defending the self, but from understanding, letting go, and embracing the impermanent nature of all things." The monks and villagers absorbed this teaching deeply, sensing its truth not as a concept, but as a lived reality demonstrated through the monk's life. It was a truth that transcended words, transcended fear, anger, and pride. It was a direct reflection of the awakened mind. As the afternoon waned, the villagers began to leave, carrying the lessons and subtle shifts in awareness into their homes, fields, and daily interactions. Travelers departed, inspired not only by the monk's teachings, but by the tangible experience of observing a life aligned with truth. Anuruddha remained with Saladhara beneath the banyan tree, feeling the profound stillness that had settled over the monastery and the village. The monk reflected quietly on the journey. He had faced accusation, misunderstanding, and malice, yet he had never defended himself. In doing so, he had transcended the ego that seeks validation, control, and recognition. The ripples of awareness he had cultivated had transformed lives, spread through the village, and extended beyond the boundaries of the immediate community. He understood now, fully, that liberation is not a solitary achievement, but a living process that touches others in ways both subtle and profound. As twilight approached, the sky painted in hues of rose and violet. Saladhara closed his eyes and sat in deep meditation. The wind carried the whispers of leaves, the distant songs of night birds, and the subtle hum of life itself. In this stillness, he perceived the unity of all things, the impermanence of joy and sorrow, the interconnection of all beings, and the profound freedom that arises when the mind releases attachment and observes with clarity. In that sacred stillness, Venerable Saladhara reached the culmination of his path. It was not marked by grand proclamations, accolades, or recognition, but by the deep, abiding awareness of truth. He understood fully the nature of ego, the workings of karma, and the path to liberation. Every thought, every action, every breath flowed effortlessly from wisdom, compassion, and presence. And so, beneath the banyan tree, surrounded by the soft embrace of twilight, the monk who never defended himself realized the ultimate freedom. The mind, untethered by pride, resentment, or fear, reflected the universe as it truly is, impermanent, interconnected, and luminous. The village slept peacefully that night, carrying the subtle echoes of transformation into dreams. The monks meditated, embodying the lessons they had witnessed. The travelers departed, carrying the story of Saladhara far and wide. And the monk himself remained, a living testament to the power of silent wisdom, patient presence, and the courage to let go of the self. The final awakening was not a single moment, but the culmination of countless choices, countless acts of mindfulness, and countless ripples of awareness. It was the proof that true freedom does not lie in defending oneself, but in observing, releasing, and embracing the impermanence and interconnectedness of all life. Beneath the starlit sky, with the moon rising softly above the mountains, Venerable Saladhara breathed deeply, his heart and mind aligned in perfect harmony. The journey had reached its fulfillment, not in words, but in presence, not in recognition, but in liberation, and not in defense, but in the quiet, transformative power of a life lived in awareness and compassion. Underscore 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 underscore